That's a fact. And it's really not about the position, even though this data and this, placements kind of mean something. For conversations on radio, it means something. For data analysts, it means something. It's like when your kid comes back with second position or fifth, and you're asking the person who took first, do they have two heads? Yes, the positioning might matter. But the point is, you want to check the quality of the education, not their position in class. That just gives you an idea of how much work needs to be done. Now, it is assessed by experts and published annually, the Corruption Index. And Transparency International have been doing that since 1995. So they've been doing it for a long time. I'm not asking you to believe the report. I'm just telling you that we get this index every year. I'm sure you heard of it last year and the year before, and it's going to come next year. And if you're asking, well, Sam, this is an assessment of public sector corruption. What about the private sector? If they did not capture the private sector, are we sure that we have a comprehensive report? Yes, we do. Because you see, the private sector is regulated by the public sector. Let's take the average private institution, your banks. While the banks are private, the regulator of the banks is CBN. So if the CBN is free of corruption, I bet you the banks will be as well. But the banks can only get away with corruption if their regulator is also corrupt or lets things like that fly. Nigeria Info is a private station. Who is our regulator? NBC, public sector. So if you can tackle the corruption in public sector, by extension, you have handled the private sector. Now, for the past 3 years, we've been hovering around this position. This is the report for 2024. As you can tell, we're in a new year. So they've collated the result for 2024 and dropped it. Now, 2024, we're 36 with 26 points, which is what I just read. For 2023, we had 25 points. And for 2022, 24 points. So we are still in the same neighborhood of corruption. And if you're looking at corruption, there have been institutions that have been reported through the years as the corruption leaders of Nigeria. According to this report, this is the order, starting from the most corrupt. The Nigerian police is the most corrupt institution in this country, followed by political parties, the next national and state assemblies, then local and municipal governments, then federal and state executive councils. Then number 5 or 6, and this is crazy, traffic police and Federal Road Safety Corps. First of all, you have to understand how crazy it is that Nigeria police is at number 1. Then number 5 or 6, there is traffic police. That tells you that the corruption with traffic police is treated as a different kind of corruption. And then finally, what they put here is NEPA, or the power companies. But that's not public sector. And this is from the Nigeria Corruption Survey Report. This is not Transparency International. The National Bureau of Statistics has also published reports annually stating that the police is the most corrupt public institution. So while we're ranking 36 on a global scale, internally, according to numerous reports, these are the institutions in the country, in the public sector, that are the most corrupt. Number 1, the Nigeria police. 2, political parties. And I'm kind of shocked. Political parties comes number 2 ahead of national and state assemblies. So they are saying that the PDP, APC, and many of our parties are more corrupt than the Senate and House of Reps. It's difficult to wrap my head around that, but that's the ranking. The next is the local and municipal government. So your local government chairman, your local councils, they claim that there's a lot going on there that you and I don't know about. And then traffic police. Well, you don't need convincing in this department. You very likely have supported this industry. Maybe there was a day or two where you were driving and you shook hands with the police officer from your window. And that handshake was an exchange of capital. So, now that we know the problem, what is the solution? Because we can't claim to talk development and keep reeling out the problem every day. Nigeria is corrupt, yes, it is corrupt. What can we do to fix it? There are lots of things to do. There are many stakeholders who have given recommendations. Analysts and catalysts have said we must do that and do this. But there are three things that if we start to do immediately, corruption will drastically reduce to the barest minimum. Like I said, there are many other things, but these three, if we can handle these ones, I bet you, by next year or the year after, we'll be in the top 10. The first is to reduce the cost of governance. The reason why everybody and their grandfathers want to be politicians or political office holders is because the benefits attached to those offices. There are governors who serve for 8 years. And even though they won't tell you, but the reality is they might never be poor for life. The average Nigerian has to work for 35 years and then get a pension, gratuity, and all of that. You can be a governor in this country and serve for just 8 years and successfully retire. And your generation is good. So we must reduce the cost of governance. We must reduce the attachment to power that makes it so attractive. So that if people know that this is a job to do, they might not be killing each other to get there, capture power, and never let go. The second is that there must be a zero tolerance for corruption. Now, there's corruption everywhere. There is no country that does not have corrupt elements. It doesn't matter the country you call. As long as there are people, there is an architecture of how to beat the system. As long as you have people in a system, there are few elements, or maybe even a lot of elements, thinking of how they can beat the system. So every country has corruption, but some countries have zero tolerance to corruption. That means that the fight against corruption must be thorough. And this is where law enforcement and the judiciary comes in. If we go after corrupt leaders and make an example of them, you see that there are repercussions. It will dissuade people. As a head of a family, you've told your kids, everyone at home, everyone must be home at 6 o'clock. And your first son, by commission or omission, somehow, makes it back at 6:30. And you make an example of, you deal with him so badly that all his younger siblings understand what happens. You don't have to preach a sermon to them the next day. How many past corrupt leaders have been tried, have seen justice for their offenses? So if we continue to treat it, with kids' gloves, act like it's not a serious problem, we'll continue. And the final one is we have to digitize payment systems, reduce cash transactions. If you understand the level of corruption that happens in the civil service, because there is the loophole or the opportunity to exchange cash, you'd be shocked. I know that things are changing now, but you want to go get your driver's license, your passport, and somebody says, I know how I will do it for you. All those backyard runs, as we call it, many times it's cash changing hands. If payment can be made digitally to systems that are open to everyone, it's going to drastically reduce corruption. So that tomorrow, if you say, I gave Sam Oracle Chinedu 50,000 naira to help me get this, there's a trail. If I received it through my bank, the account statement will show. It's very easy for whoever wants to try or investigate to find that trail. But if you gave him the 50K cash, like some of our wonderful politicians give in dollars, it's untraceable. unless there are eyewitnesses or a CCTV camera that captured that exchange. It's also the same way we shake police officers in traffic. You don't transfer to the account. So you can't catch anybody. If we implement these three, I promise you, in about 1 year, we'll do better on this index. And it's not, we must make these changes not just because of the corruption ranking. No. It's not like we want to become the least corrupt nation in the world just because of the ranking, but because of our future. It's important. Else, we'll get to a point where there will be nothing else to steal. The thieves are available. They are hungry, but there's nothing to steal. So supply would outweigh. Is it supply that will be more than demand or demand? There's an availability of corrupt people, but there's nothing to take. Then guess what? We will begin to steal. We don't want to get there. 0817-923-0002. Our latest corruption rankings have been released. Our report sheet result card is out. And this time, we are 36 out of 180 countries. The 36th most corrupt country in the world. What say you? 0817-923-0003. WhatsApp is 080-903-06416. As always, we're live on Facebook and Twitter at Nigeria InfoPH. You can watch, listen, and drop comments on those platforms. Please turn off your radio as you call me. Hello, good evening. Sorry, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Robin Maga, the farmer.
Okay. Thank you for joining us. All right.
Oracle, I will be surprised if you are surprised though.
Okay.
Really?
Hello?
The ranking by my own rating.
Okay.
Is incorrect.
It's incorrect.
Nigeria is supposed to come further front than that 36.
Okay, so what position do you think we deserve by your ranking?
I've not been to the other part of the world physically.
Okay.
But what I read and I watch on TV, Nigeria should be occupying about the 4th or the 5th, the most corrupt country in the world.
Okay, so we can make that change for your sake. We can.
You say what?
We can make that change for your sake.
That's what I'm saying. Now, let me mention one or two before I leave.
Okay.
You are aware that it took years before John Nyame and Joshua Dare were convicted, former governors. While they were doing the time in the jail, President Buhari, former president, who is believed to be a no-nonsense man, went and pardoned them, released them from prison. You're not aware. Are you not here when a sitting governor was boasting that if EFCC come, I will show them the bridges are built? Are you not in Nigeria here? As soon as this present government came in, what they did is to trample on their party constitution. You read that in there now, that party politics. Who are the people occupying National Assembly? Who are the governors? Who is the president? Yesterday, there's a discourse as regards Sarah suing President Bola Tinubu to order the Attorney General to prosecute or how 150 billion naira was missing, collected by MDAs, ministries and agencies. This current government is not corruption. As we are talking now, police on the road committing armed robbery with their guns.
They are not committing armed robbery. No. I know that some might be doing what they shouldn't, but it's not.
Let me modify it. Police on the road now, collecting money from people with guns in their hands. So you can start to understand what that means.
Okay.
We're not ready to change. Corruption everywhere. Killing and looting everywhere. No matter is concluded in court as regards prosecution. It's a pity. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for calling. Armed robbery. Aggravated form of theft that involves the use of a lethal weapon to perpetrate violence or threat of violence against a victim. if I want to look at the semantics, I would say that, they don't threaten anyone. Yes, they have the weapon. They just open hand and you know what to do. Is it the armed robbery? It might be armed charity. You're donating to a cause. Or maybe payment of tax. But seeing the money collected at checkpoints as armed robbery, the offense is too heavy for that transaction. Lawson calls from Yenugua. Good afternoon, Lawson.
Sam, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Look, sometimes some of these things, I really don't even believe in it. This Transparency International, I don't know.
Okay.
Look, it's a perception index. Let us not forget that. It is a perception index, not based on facts. Yes,
No. It is based on data. It's based on data. Yes, it's perception, but it's based on data.
The data good. This data will connect them. See, look, let me tell you, what are they doing? When they look at those that come in and out of the country, okay, you go to Nigeria in and out, they give you a questionnaire. That's what they use. The questionnaire. Is Nigeria corrupt? Yes, no. They answer those questionnaires, and based on what they get from the questionnaires, they come up with their report. Seriously, do you think that Nigeria is that every time they keep dropping Nigeria so low, fourth most corrupt, fifth most corrupt, second most corrupt? What about, there was a time, just a journalist, it took just a journalist to dismiss 9 judges in Ghana. 9 judges that were found to be corrupt by a journalist announced. So when you look at some of these smaller African countries, I feel they gang up against Nigeria and then do these things to give Nigeria a bad name. But seriously, it's just like you give me a questionnaire, I am around you, I know Sam and all that, and say, is Sam corrupt? And I fill out those questionnaires and I submit. It's not as if you caught me and then at the end of the day the matter was taken to court and court found me guilty. The only time you can say someone is guilty is when the matter goes to court and at the end of the day the person is found guilty. But if it is based on perception, what people think and all that, then I think that I have never agreed to this very report. Each time it comes out. Each time it comes out, I know generally Africans were corrupt. But why is it that it is majorly Nigeria each time? It's the question I am asking. Why is it always Nigeria more than most African countries? Why? And even some other countries, even some of the other countries in Europe, Asia, and America, they model up with Nigeria. You begin to wonder why we are put in that same group and that same class.
Yeah, but Lawson, it doesn't say.
I agree we are corrupt, but we are not worse than some other countries that are up there above us.
Okay,
it's my argument.
Okay. Now, I get the argument, but at no point has it said that Nigeria is the most corrupt, right? It never said so.
There were times under Obasanjo where Nigeria comes down even short. It's been on since Obasanjo's time. This whole thing, transparency thing, started with Obasanjo was among those that came up with this entire thing. But at the end of the day, even Obasanjo disputed some of these reports that came out during his time. So that's my problem. But then again, we cannot rule out the fact that it is a perception index. Underline it, a perception index. So you cannot use it to make any judgment as far as I'm concerned. That's my argument.
Okay, Lawson, thank you very much. You can use it to make a projection, right? And yes, I know that we can read to how does Transparency International get their data. You're going to see the data sources. I know the African Development Bank is there. There are about maybe 8 or 9. But stating that because it's a perception index, it is not as close to accurate as possible is an argument I might want to have live on air. And it's not a case of wanting to put the country down, right? It's like saying, how do I argue this? Okay, say you have a dysfunctional family. Everything that can go wrong in a family goes wrong in your family. Your sister had a baby before getting married. She's not even married. She's had a second one. Your brother is a drug addict. One of your other brothers was caught, in armed robbery. Everything that can go wrong. You wake up one day, they say your father has another family. Your family is dysfunctional. And then someone says, hey, you guys are the worst family in this community. You say, no. Why would you do that? There are families we are better than. That might be the case, literally, but you are a bad family. That's the point. So I can understand why you would argue with the ranking, which I also said, while I was talking earlier. But the point is, if we are dealing with corruption, our argument at this point should not be our position. It is that we can stand boldly and say, you know what? We don't have this problem anymore. And it is a stretch. Okonkwo calls from Rumokuta. Hello, Okonkwo. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, if you and me.
It's Sam.
Okay, bro, Sam.
Please go ahead.
Sure. Another bad news. In other countries, these are 5 agencies mentioned, because as we are talking, I was writing, these 5 agencies are seen as the pillars that hold the central government of a nation and cause the nation to succeed and the citizen equally to succeed. And unfortunately, our own, these agencies were mentioned as corrupt agencies. My brother, there's no headway. I'm telling you the whole truth. Say, we don't know what to do. Because just like we are saying, is there anything that can be done? No, there's nothing that can be done because they have monopolized the nation. We are conquered people. That's my conclusion. The citizens are conquered people. Thank you.
Well, Okonkwo, you are used to making that statement. And sometimes I think I just might be too optimistic. We are working our way out of being conquered. That would be my response. Divine says the one way we carry first, they no give us our score. We should be number 1 in the world. Must they cheat us in every competition? Divine, I can tell you we are not the most corrupt, even though it doesn't really matter, but we are not. They have cheated us in. We can't be 36 in the world. Mr. Chinedu, I've traveled a little bit. Nigeria is really corrupt, both public and private sector. You don't want me to go into detail. I wish you would. Good afternoon. That's unfair. How can Nigeria be ranked 36? We should not be on the list at all. The only thing we currently lead is corruption, and we're equally robbed of that. It's unfair. No matter the yardstick of the study, the ranking should be restudied. Kelechi from Mile 3. You guys really don't believe in our country. I mean, we have problems, but come on. Thank God that we're able to say, top of the day to you. Nigeria ranks 140 out of 180 in latest corruption index. Nigeria is supposed to be number 1 because there's high level of corruption. Hope this index was not rigged because corruption is eating us so deeply to the extent that we don't trust each other. That's from Thank God. Innocent calls from Port Harcourt. Hello, Innocent. Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so Innocent is my name from Port Harcourt.
All right.
You have heard of the saying, 36 states and their capital.
Mm-hmm.
That is exactly where we are. One country, one level of corruption or the other. I mean, one state, one level of corruption or the other. One state, one level of corruption or the other. Round it all together, 36 positions in the world. There is no need crying over split meat. Nigeria is a corrupt country. Anyone trying to defend Nigeria knows that the person does not plan good for this country. Instead of asking, what are we going to do? The earlier we start doing something, the better for us, because we cannot continue like this. The presidency is not serious to fight corruption in this country. Now, take, for example, the police that is ranking number 1. We have been told severally that they should not collect money on the road, but what do we see? It's very glaring. Children are seeing it every day by day. Police is collecting money on the road, and you are telling me that the number, we are not up to that. I don't just believe it. In fact, we're supposed even to be more. Thank you very much. Innocent is my name from Port Harcourt.
No, Innocent, that's a very guilty statement you've made, and I didn't think about it from that perspective. We are 36, and you say it's because we have 36 states. Douglas from Amadiama. Hello, Douglas. Good afternoon.
Hello, sir.
Good afternoon.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, so can I. Please go ahead.
What's the administration all about? We are making progress. People can have great economy. Let's have the other one, 36, corrupt nation. That's a good one. What is it? They are making ways. How will they eradicate corruption? Are we the only ones that are corrupt? They are not the only ones, because come on, we are making ways. We are making success. This is great success, Nigerians. Or investors to see what they are doing. So they work is smart when they are coming to invest in our economy. They are very smart. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Douglas. So the thing is, I hope that you get this. Transparency International did not just publish a report with only Nigeria on it. It's a corruption index, the global. So what happens is the Nigerian media would, of course, take our own ranking. I'm sure that in different countries, they are analyzing their position and having conversations around it. Well, let's see. Can we squeeze in the next? The federal government has commenced ministerial press briefings as part of efforts to promote transparency and accountability in governance. The Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, announced this during a press conference in Abuja on Tuesday. Idris stated that President Bola Tinubu had directed all ministers to appear periodically before the media to provide updates on their activities and policies. According to Idris, the briefing will serve as a platform for ministers to directly engage with Nigerians, highlight key developments in their respective ministries, and address public concerns. Is this good? Yes, it is. There are a few ministers who are doing this already. Minister Wike will not have a problem. He was already engaging with media, sometimes more than was required. He recently won the Minister of the Year at the This Day Awards, and one of the many reasons, I believe, is because he is a vocal minister. Yes, I'm sure he does his fair share of work in the FCT. But you might not be wrong to say that Wike is the most popular minister in this country. I don't think you'd be far from the truth, because he's always in the media having conversations around things that concern his jurisdiction. So the president now is saying all ministers must engage periodically. And what would be the interval? Would it be once every month? Would it be once in a quarter? Would the ministries in this people not know this? So by extension, people do not know the ministers heading those ministries. But if at some point as a Nigerian, you get to engage and hear from every minister. I have one right here in the studio. There's an interview. We're asking questions. We open the phone lines. It kind of helps the idea of governance. So do you think this is a great policy? Are you here for it? Would it increase and boost your confidence in the government? Or should things just be as they are? I'll take your calls shortly after the break. Please stay with us.